Alright, so this is what we call trashy prepositions in here. And it has to do with a story that my students came up with one of the first years that I taught to help them remember what the crap was going on with how to make contractions with prepositions, the prepositions a and duh. So we're going to look at a first. And a means at, to, or in. We're going to use it mainly for at and to, but it can mean in as well. And what happens is a cannot be beside le and lay when you write a sentence. So the story that they came up with was that a and la are dating and they break up, so they are still two people. You still have a and you still have la, meaning a and la can be beside each other in a sentence. Same thing happens. A now moves on to L apostrophe. They date, they break up, so now you have a L apostrophe. Again, they can be standing beside each other in a sentence. You can have a la plage because plage is feminine. However, a and le meet after a and L apostrophe break up, and they get married and they have a baby. And the baby's name is O, A-U. So anytime you were trying to say to the something, if the is L-E, you have to change things. And I'll show you some examples here in just a second. But unfortunately for our story, le, something happens. They get a divorce, le dies, we don't know, you make up your own story. So a finds a new soulmate whose name is lay. They have a baby, but the baby has a different last name. So it's O, but it's O with an X on the end. How that actually works in real life, if I zoom out a little bit so you can see everything. If you say, I am going to the museum, so the I obviously is je, but we know that. The am going part, if you look at your avoir, aller chart, aller not avoir, you look at your aller chart, it is vais, so je vais means I am going. And here's where it changes. To is a, wrong button, but museum is le musée. And if you look up here on your trashy preposition chart, a and le cannot be beside each other. They make something else. So what you will actually do, instead of writing a le, you put o. So now that o right here is to plus the. A plus le equals o, and it means at, to, or in the. If, however, you have a feminine noun like the beach, you have nous for we, allons for our going. Here, if you put a, whoops, that is the wrong thing. Here we go. La plage, a and la can be beside each other according to our chart right here. So they can stay like that. You don't have to make anything new. It can be that. And when you're talking about de something, which means of or from, it works the same way. De and la are okay to be beside each other. De and L apostrophe are okay to be beside each other. But de and le make a baby and are due. And then de plus lay becomes day, D-E-S. And you have seen day before when it meant some. And it's like if you have some of the pencils. We just don't say the of the part all the time. And that's what it means. But it also means from. Sorry. So if you look at our last example, he is ill. Is going is aller. You conjugate it to va. To the stadium, we know that stadium is le, L-E, stad. So we have to have o because it is masculine. You have a plus le. And now from the apartment, apartment starts with a vowel. So from the, de and L apostrophe can be beside each other, just like a and L apostrophe can be beside each other. So you leave it alone. You don't have to change anything. So as you are writing sentences, you have to be aware of what gender your noun is when you're saying I am going somewhere, I'm going to the beach, I'm going to the museum, I'm going to the cafe, because it changes. The word to and the will change depending on if they can stand beside each other or not.